and everybody was voting in the
West
country.
Virginia one,
Everybody
yeah.
was voting on these photos of these women. It was flesh and commodities. Look,
Well-
women are human beings. I just think this idea that women should be evaluated principally by their appearance, by their bodies, by all of that, it's bound up with women being viewed as property of men, as breeders, or as sex objects.
Well,
And it's
let
the
me ask-
virgin whore that we've had ever since classes emerged. It's in the Bible, the Jezebel Madonna. It's in the Britney Spears story when she was the, innocent young.
So why are people so
to the
fascinated
despised
with
temptress?
that?
Because once you have, look, in the earliest, and we go through this is actually really important for people. Women's oppression is not natural, and the way we live today, it's easy for people to think, oh, this is just natural. It's not natural. That originally, in our very earliest human societies, women had disproportionate responsibility for child rearing and childbearing of necessity. Biologically, there was no formula. You had to care for the young. So there was a naturally occurring division of labor, but it was not codified into an institutionalized relation of domination until you have the emergence of enough of a surplus in what people produce, the material requirements of life, food, shelter, these things, enough of a surplus that some section of society was going to privately appropriate that at odds from the rest. And once classes emerge in that way and a state emerges to back up and enforce those relations, it becomes important to control who women sleep with and whose children they have, because you're trying to protect lines of inheritance of property. Now you have private wealth, and all of a sudden women, in order to ensure that males hand down their property to their male heirs, they have to control. You need to be a virgin when you get married, and then you need to have sex only with your husband. He can run off and do other things and have quote-unquote illegitimate children. That itself reveals that it's a property relation. They're not legitimate. They can't inherit property.
Sarah Taylor, let me take a moment. This is Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DiRienzo with Miss Joan Marie Musi. Our guest is Sarah Taylor, a reporter for Revolution newspaper, and we're talking about women and women's rights and women's liberation here on Let Them Talk. We have a number on the screen if you have questions and if you're motivated. Call us. We're live.
Yeah,
212-757-1538 is the number, and we'll take your calls. So feel free to call. Call us up. All right. Sarah, very interesting what you're talking about. I wanted to go back, though, to an earlier issue. And when we were talking about pageants and beauty pageants, what it made me think about was fashion and people, and even pornography. I mean, it's the largest business in America. I mean, there wouldn't be, and even the biggest...
what's wrong with fashion?
Well, no, first I'm going to say, right, I'm going to say nothing wrong with fashion. That's the point I'm going to say. What about things like fashion which are commercialized, but yet people love and which do add some interest to life? We all don't want to exactly look the same way all the time. How would that fit under a revolutionary society? And the other thing is, speaking about pornography, just programming, as I've seen in information I've read, it's the biggest business in the world. It's a
Because guys love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like there is a market for it. I mean, it's not,
Of course
people
there's a market for it.
aren't forcing it down people's throats. Millions of people from all walks of
But I have
society.
a similar question of what would the
Right.
ideal look like?
Right.
Like, if this is wrong, then what would the ideal be?
Right, exactly, right.
Well, while I have this moment, and since you reminded me in the beginning, I will say people should read this declaration. It goes into
let
this
them know where
more
they can read it,
More
too.
than we're able to just touch on here. It's available at Revolution Newspaper's website, and that is revcom.us. It's revcom.us.
Right, because
And
in
you can
half
read
an
the whole
hour
thing.
we're barely going to
Yeah.
touch on it. But
Um,
and you're also going on a speaking tour.
Yeah, we're
right?
launching
So-
a speaking tour because there actually needs to be a movement today. This declaration is it's analyzing, but it's also calling forward a movement of women and men the world over who refuse to see women shamed, raped, spat upon, beaten, killed, maimed, thrown acid at, groped, all of the things that women, insulted, degraded in a million ways that women face all over the planet. And so this is calling forward a movement to confront these outrages and to build a movement for revolution, because ultimately it will take revolution and a revolutionary state power aimed at emancipating all of humanity, overcoming class relations which are bound up with the oppression of women and reinforce the oppression of women. And so people should go to the website revcom.us. But to speak to the question directly of pornography and also the sex industry worldwide, it is
And the
global
demand for it, the massive demand for it. It's not pushed just by a handful of pornographers. People want it. It wouldn't be
Well,
a
but
porn.
let me
Yeah.
pose this. First off, just to set the record straight,
Yeah.
hundreds of millions of women are tricked, sold, and kidnapped and beaten and raped into the sex industry. On a global scale, there are millions and 20 million women in China who, after socialism was overturned, when capitalism was restored and women were cast out of meaningful work, they had been brought into it during the Cultural Revolution and the previous time under Mao. Now there are 20 million women who are sex workers and being shipped across borders. That's not
But there
voluntary.
is a difference between a sex slave worker and somebody who wants to do it, like,
A very, very, very small minority who chooses to do
That's
this
true.
out of having an options of
well, I
doing
mean, there's
something
like Nevada
creative.
where it's legal and people are
I know,
voluntarily
but even
doing
there,
that.
even there, two things about this. Women are kept in conditions where this is what they have to resort to. Overwhelmingly, when women get into this, it's because of the constraint of what
Oh, so
is
you don't
possible.
think somebody would
But
just
then-
have the idea that that
but
was
then
a great
to the
thing
degree
to
that there
do?
are women who volunteer, and I've met some of them, who say, "Oh, I'm doing this. I own my own commodity.
Come on,
a-"
they are fun
you
girls.
know, and they're entrepreneurial about themselves.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of BS. It's just themselves being indoctrinated with the notion
But
that
they're
they
great-
are a commodity.
but they're
Can I
great
ask for a direct
girls.
answer?
They
Because
are.
I
Yeah.
think that you might have a direct answer to this. In the revolutionary society, would prostitution be legal? Would people be allowed after the revolution to do it if they wanted? Because even a revolution couldn't control what everybody thought.
No, you can't control what people think, but no, prostitution will not be legalized. It will not be an industry. Women who have been prostitutes will not be stigmatized.
Oh,
They will
that's
not be. It will not be criminalized.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea that this is what women should aspire to, or that a woman's flesh, that her body is something to be purchased, that is something that we are going to leave in history. It's a notion that
But
came
what
into
about
being at a
somebody
certain
like
point.
Dita Von Teese? Do you know who she is?
I'm not
She's
familiar.
like a big burlesque star, and I mean, she's gorgeous. She's like totally, oh my God, she's so beautiful, and she does this whole burlesque act like in a champagne glass. You know, it's like classic. It's brilliant, really, I think. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that form of entertainment. That
Where
guess
does pornography and art? Because it's the same issue that even in our current society, a lot of people call things pornography that even revolution newspapers defended as art.
Well, here's the thing: is I don't think, and there's been a false dichotomy that's been built up where either you are for the absolute commodification and degradation of women's bodies and now men's bodies too in any format, and somehow if we degrade men too as sex objects, that's equality. It's neither that nor are we talking about something puritanical where, oh, nobody has sex and we don't.
right,
Look,
that's the
we
fear,
actually
right?
want to, but here's the thing: if you get beyond commodity relations, you get rid of the conditions that force women to be degraded and demeaned, which is what happens in huge numbers right now through the act of sex becoming a act of domination, which happens in this world.
But you want a
Overwhelmingly.
sex
But at the
positive-
same time, just let me finish
Okay.
this point. But at the same time, you unfeather sexual relations. You get rid of that degradation, and you unfeather sexual relations. We have this point. Imagine that everybody was able, imagine if never again did a woman feel compelled or coerced to sell herself or give herself or be forced to have sex with somebody against her will. And imagine if sex for everybody became something that was truly voluntary, engaged in only when they chose to, with mutual consent, caringness, and mutual respect. And there'd be a whole different atmosphere created. I want to
No,
take
well,
the
wait.
call.
Let's
take
come
the
back.
caller in.
No,
Let's
he's
get
not
the
in
caller
right
in.
now.
just
He
call
lost
back.
Oh.
He, she.
But we do
whatever it
want
is,
to
please
live in
call.
a
Yeah.
sex-positive
Yeah.
We
society.
want to live in a society where people, all human relations, are unfettered from the weight of tradition, the weight
Here we
of
go.
oppression, and the weight of Puritanism and all of that. But that's different than I'm sorry, burlesque. That's still highly constrained. And you know, I'm not saying that.
Hello, you're on. Hello.
Hello?
Hi, Paul.
Yes. How you doing? Caller.
Hey, you been getting any pussy fucking poo down?
See, that's what I was talking about. Sorry about that.
I didn't even hear it, but if,
Right.
if it's what I can imagine,
It was dirty
It was,
talk.
it was just dirty child. It's like elementary.
This is the
like-
society we
no,
live
we
in.
wouldn't do this in
This
elementary
is such
school.
perfect exposure.
We
This
wouldn't
is
do
how
it.
people are trained to think. And I have to say, I don't think that men are the problem, but men are socialized in this world to just be idiotic and demeaning. And there's no good reason for it. They don't have to be that way. I know
Yeah.
plenty of men who are not that way. And this is part of the problem. This is part of the